Hey guys, welcome or welcome back. Today we are picking up where we left off in the end of our knit stitch video. So what I have here is a few rows of our garter stitch that we have done with all knitting. So if you guys know how to do the knit stitch, you know how to do garter stitch. We just work back and forth across the rows with all knit stitches. So today in this video, we're going to talk about how to do the purl stitch and how to create our stockinette section. So that's going to be nice, flat, pretty V stitches that typical of knit. If you need a refresher on the knit stitch, check out the description. It has a link to another video, the previous video that we talked about doing knit stitch and garter stitch. Okay, so let's talk about the purl stitch. To do purl stitch, we're going to keep all of our stitches on our left hand needle the same as we did for the knit stitch video, and we're going to work onto the empty right hand needle. Okay, so we're going to hold on to all the stitches here of our left hand needle, slide them down towards the tip of our needle with our working yarn working off the right hand side of it. Okay, now we take our knitting needle here and we're going to insert it the opposite way that we did for our purl stitch. So at the beginning of our row, our yarn is going to already be in the front, but if we're switching to a purl stitch in the middle of the row, we want to keep our yarn to the front, and I'll show you how to do that as well. All right, so we're going to insert our needle from right to left. Last time we inserted our needle this way, left to right, kind of in a vertical fashion like that. Now we're going to stay horizontal and we're going to insert it across directly like so. Okay, so now we're going to hold on to everything with our thumb and our index or middle finger like so. Hold on to everything, grab our working yarn, and we're going to bring it over and wrap it around that right hand needle. Now it's going to slip in between the two needles. That's perfect. That's what we want. So when you bring your needle back out, it's going to stay over top of that stitch or over top of that needle. Now we can loop off this first stitch like so, and now we're going to do it again. So as you can see here, because we just finished a purl stitch, our yarn is going to be to the front. Okay, but if you're working back and forth, say in a ribbing or a seed stitch, you're going to be working with knit stitches as well. Your yarn is going to be in the back when it's a knit stitch, in the front for a purl stitch. So now we're going to insert our needle like so from right to left, and just catching that front leg, bring our yarn around, and when we push it back through, I sometimes use my thumb to make sure that this new stitch does not fall off, and bring the needle to the back, and we can loop off this stitch. So what you can see here happening is we're creating these bumps that are indicative of our purl stitches. Now you can actually see those happening here along the previous section of garter stitch as well, but I'll show you when we get to the end of the row how the magic works and what this actually turns into. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue these purl stitches. So we're going to insert our needle from right to left, catching just the front loop, yarn over. Now make sure you go around the needle every time, okay, around the back. Okay, then we loop it off, or bring our needle back through and then loop it off our left needle. Okay, so let's continue that. We'll move a little bit more quickly, round the back, and then back through and loop it off. Okay, insert, wrap around, come out, and then loop it off. Okay, let's continue that. When we work our rows with one row of knit stitches followed by one row of purl stitches, we will get this lovely flat pretty V-stitch stockinette section. Okay. This is our garter stitch section here. It's creating this kind of horizontal 3D pattern, but when we've worked our row of purl stitches over top on the previous row, where we just finished, you've got this beautiful V-stitch happening here. There's lots of different ways that you can work this stitch once you combine it with the purl stitch, and I'll show you a couple of those now. So let's start with the knit stitch, and then if we want to transition now after our knit stitch, see our yarn is in the back, we want to transition to a purl stitch. Now we want to bring our yarn through between our needles to bring it to the front. Now we can insert it so we can purl. So now our yarn again is in the front, and if we want to go back and knit, we're going to bring it back through like so, and now we can knit. So what we're creating here is actually called maybe a ribbing or maybe a seed stitch, depending on how we make our second row on top of this. But you can see what's happening here. So we've got our V stitch here from our knit stitch and our bump here that's showing our purl stitch. Okay, so as we work our way across, if we want to continue working, knit 1, purl 1 all the way across our row, it's going to create this bump and then V stitch pattern. Let's do a few more and I'll show you. And you can see what's happening here a little bit more clearly, hopefully. So when you're looking at your work, you can see our purl stitches are these bumps and our V stitches are the knit stitches. So every time we do a knit stitch on the right side of our work, it becomes a purl on the back side. So if we turn it around, we have this stitch right here. Let's hold on to this one, okay? Move this to the middle so we don't drop it. Okay, so let's hold on to this bump right here, okay? So I'm gonna hold both sides of it, and that way when we turn it around, it's going to create this V stitch on the other side. Okay, so this is how we get some of those reversible patterns that look so beautiful when we look at both sides of our work. That's kind of the awesomeness of knitting and purling our stitches back and forth, or, you know, in various different patterns. All right, so I've put together some options for knits and purl styles of pattern. Like this one, this is our 1x1 ribbing. So this one's great for edges of hats and, you know, could be like cuffs of sweaters. Lots of different things can be done for this 1x1 ribbing. And then we have our 2x2 ribbing, and our 2x2 ribbing, again, same thing. You can definitely use this for a hat or a sweater cuff, top or bottom of a sweater, you know, nice and simple. And that's just done with 2 knits and 2 purls. And then we have another option where we can do our knit 1, purl 1, and we work back and forth. And that one is our seed stitch. So this is our a swatch of our seed stitch. It is so much fun and it really does give us this awesome, you know, it's pretty stretchy in all directions and it just kind of gives us this awesome texture. I'm going to include all the patterns for these on the blog post if you guys want to check those out, if you want to do any of those. There's also a couple of videos that we link to, especially those first 3. We did a scarf, how to make ribbing neater and things like that, on a couple of different posts. So I'll link those videos below in the description and you guys can check those out. But if you are more of an experienced knitter, there's lots of different options you can go to that get even a little bit more complicated, like this one. This is called a waffle stitch. It's super fun too. So it gives you this great vertical line. You've got some horizontal lines happening here as well. Lots and lots of fun with that waffle stitch. This one has a few more rows in its repeat, so a little bit more complicated than, say, a seed stitch or the ribbing. All right, and then we have another one. This one has an 8-row repeat. So 8 different rows that you're gonna work to get this awesome seersucker pattern. And then finally we have one that has a 12-row repeat. It is our basket weave. So it's multiples of 6 stitches and then you're doing 12 rows. So basically these 2 sections of our pattern is our repeat. And so I did it twice here to show you exactly what it looks like. Now, really the sky's the limit on these knit and purl patterns. A little while ago, I did one that was an 18-row repeat. Yes, I know it sounds a little bit crazy, but it was super fun. So I made a dishcloth and it's done in this lattice. So you've got your lattice that's happening. So it's similar a little bit to the basket weave, but also has some seed stitching in the middle here. I hope you guys can see that with the striping that I picked this yarn that's like super stripy. So it kind of gives you a pretty good idea of what's happening there. Now this one is an 18-row repeat. So really the sky's the limit as far as like knit and purl patterns. You can do tons and tons of patterns with just knits and purl stitches. You don't need to get fancy like we did in the herringbone video, or it was just not straight knits and purls, right? So we have this great dishcloth video we might introduce in the future. It was a lot of fun to make, although it is really big. It is quite large, and there's my hand, right? So we're looking at like, I don't know, 12 inches wide or something. It was crazy. because of the number of stitches you need for each section of the repeat, right? I think it was like 18 stitches or something. So we did 42 and we followed that pattern. But anyways, it was a lot of fun to create. So that's just a couple of examples of what you guys can do with knits and purls. There's tons and tons more options. Another creator has like a whole book on these. There's like 50 different knit and purl stitch patterns that you can do with just knits and purls. So you guys might want to check that out. I will link that book in the description below and you guys can have a look at that as well. That's it for this video. Thanks so much for hanging out with us and we'll see you in the next one.